Welcome to the Bible in History. I'm Jeff Johnson, and with me, of course, is my mother, Rebecca Johnson. And today we're going to be talking about the geology and whatnot of the pre-flood world and how the world looked before the flood.
Exactly.
I'm going to begin reading Genesis 2, verses 8 through 10, which says, "And the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted, and became into 4 heads."
Okay, so we're going to come in with the understanding, okay, a lot of what we've heard about the pre-flood world, whether from a Christian point or not, we're going to discover a lot of it's evolutionarily based, and we believe a lot of things. Yeah. But let's be frank, the Bible just gave the description of that's it. That's all you've got. So here's some key things that we can figure out from this. First of all, there was a land called Eden, okay? Mm-hmm. So we know that at a fairly quick-ish rate, the earth began to fill with people. Yeah. We have talked about, the fact that Cain would have married a sister or a niece or, family member. And there would have been a lot of children.
Yeah, for sure.
So there was a land called Eden, and the Garden of Eden was a portion of this land. And we often say the land of in history. They would refer to countries as the land of, not the country of. And so it would be the country of Eden, and the garden was in there. And from that garden came river. Mm-hmm. A river, a single river with one single source that then split into 4 rivers, okay? Yep. And distinctly, God is very clear that these rivers left from the east and flew and went west.
Right.
Okay? So that's also important to remember, because many people get hung up. You see, there's a number of rivers mentioned, but you're going to remember there was one at least that you recognized. And so a conclusion is drawn, and it's a wrong conclusion. Right. And that river that was mentioned is the Euphrates. Mm-hmm. You say Euphrates, and immediately everybody's mind, boom, Tigris, Euphrates, cradle of civilization, Mesopotamia, we're all there. Except
and
that
then
is...
they forget the other 2 rivers.
That's the wrong river. First of all, Tigris and Euphrates are 2 separate sources, and they do not run east to west. In fact, it's very hard to find rivers that run east to west. And they actually flow north to south. So they are not the same rivers from the Garden of Eden. And they also mention other rivers. This is really important. So let's just take a look at a few of them. Genesis 2:11 through 12.
The name of the first is Pison. That is it which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and the onyx stone. Okay, so let's go back to that first river. Okay, the name of the first river is Pison. And that river surrounds the land of, or country of, Havilah. So we now have at least 2 countries, Havilah, and we have Eden. And it's interesting because bdellium is a resin from a tree, amber in color. Bdellium, gold, and onyx today, as far as I can discover, now there's going to be some scientist out there that's going to be like, well, I know where, some obscure place, but as far as I can find in research, you don't find bdellium, gold, and onyx in the same location any longer. Right. Because the country of Havilah was destroyed in the flood. So we have that first river. Wherever that river was, we don't have it anymore. It's gone, guys. So, okay, so Pison's gone.
Well, we can argue that for Euphrates, it's still there. And we have read, there were a couple, it referred to Assyria and Ethiopia in the Bible in the early. Well, here's the catch. Assyria actually means successful. It is a human name. It is a person's name. Now, these days we equate that name to a country. But that was the name of a person at one point. And so we can't assume it's the same Assyria. So let's break this down to a notable example. Okay. York, Pennsylvania was named after York in England. Okay. New York, also named after York in England. Okay. They aren't the same place. They're just a rename. And I do marvel that we can't comprehend that Noah and his sons would just never ever speak about where they came from to anyone.
It's a very common thing when one moves from a brand new place that doesn't have any naming or anything like that. You gotta name it something, and you use something you know. Lots of cities in America were named after cities from the old world, and different things like that. They might add a little bit to it, but a lot of times it's the same thing. So if we do it nowadays, why wouldn't they do it then?
Exactly. I think part of the reason we just kind of assume they didn't know anything is that we really have them at a really dumbed down level, a Neanderthal level. Yeah, and Neanderthals didn't exist, so just stop at that.
Yeah, evolution has really impacted our view
of
the mental capacity of the pre-flood world.
Exactly. And we're going to get into this. It's going to get really fun and really exciting. But let's talk a little bit about another idea of the pre-flood world. And the truth is, this idea is another one of those things that Christians are trying to cram into the Bible with no evidence because evolutionists have deemed it. Therefore, we have to make it fit. We don't need to fit their religion. We need to follow the Bible. The Bible, okay, and that is the idea of Pangea. I want to come to that. Okay, Pangea, did it exist or not? And let me preface this by this. If you're a diehard Pangea believer, this doesn't affect our salvation, and it doesn't affect the basic biblical beliefs we have.
Yep.
So you can choose to disagree with us. That's your prerogative. I'm just going to give it to you from our standpoint. The idea of Pangea in Christendom comes from the Alexandria Septuagint translation of the Bible that came from Alexandria, Egypt. This is, in fact, a false translation of the Bible. Yeah. We use the Textus Receptus. The Septuagint has a lot of really bad stuff in it, and quite frankly, all of our modern translations come from the Alexandrian Septuagint. This is a whole nother kettle of fish. You need to do research on the Bible, but we personally, in our family, in our church, we do not use the Alexandrian Septuagint translations of the Bible. We use the Textus Receptus, and in English, that would be the King James Bible, and that is what we use. And that is important because the Septuagint claims that Genesis 2:6 says the words are pan and geos. So Pangea. That's not true. 2:6, but there went up from the midst of the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. A mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. Okay, so the actual words in this verse are panium in Hebrew and adama. Panium means face, and I'm probably saying that wrong. Some Hebrew professor out there is going to have a fit and fall in it. I don't speak Hebrew. All right. I can read my little Hebrew lexicon, but I'm not going to pronounce it correctly. I'm working on Portuguese, so bear with me. Adama, the second word, means ground. Face of the ground. Okay? Panium and ground. Pan and geos means something entirely different. Okay, so they're putting words in there that aren't in there. They're absolutely not in there. And it's interesting because the same people that really push the Pangea theory which we don't agree with, because to have Pangea, you would have to shrink South America by 30%. Most models do not include Greenland, although recently I've seen people just tacking all the continents together the best they can and creating a Pangea. Most of them do not include Australia. There's a lot of things missing in the evolutionary Pangea model, which Christians have decided to just try to shove into the Bible. Mm-hmm. And I have a real problem with that. Now, do I think the earth looked different? I absolutely do.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, I think that if you look at a map, the earth is connected everywhere. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you realize this, guys, but it is actually connected, okay? But I think that it would have been far more connected. Like if you went down into Asia, a lot of those islands would not have been so distinctly separated down towards Australia. And I think the same is true as you come up through the Middle East and into Europe. England would have been connected. There wasn't water down, and there's actually proof of this. There wasn't water in the English Channel because there are whole villages that archaeologists have found on there, like entire villages. So there was no water in the English Channel. Mm-hmm. But there was still a dip. It wasn't just something that just suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Yeah. So that is why we really don't believe in the Pangea theory. The other interesting thing is that when people put Pangea together, they also suddenly have a gushing geyser that watered the earth, except God was very clear how he did it. He said he used a mist.
Yeah, and we still see remnants of that today. You know, you'll wake up mornings and you'll see dew on all the ground or whatever. And
exactly.
It's pretty much the same thing. It really hasn't changed that much. We just have rain now to kind of...
Exactly.
Even it out.
So when... And this is really part of the reason that we don't use the Alexandrian Septuagint. There's a lot of things you need to get books on it and study it, but Egypt has never been a place, even in the Bible, that showed spirituality. It was always a picture of the world. Satan knew that, and so he would put a false Bible translation there. And so when you start adding things to the Bible, making stuff up to add to it, I feel like you're in a danger zone. Definitely. God told us that there was a land called Eden. It had a garden. One source went out and split into 4 heads. We know that Pison encompassed the land of Havilah, and we'll talk a little bit about the possibility of where that could be, or what it could have been. And we have other things like this. So God told us what he told us, and we need to stop adding to it. Now, again, as I've said, this doesn't change our salvation. If you want to believe in Pangea, fine, whatever. We're not going to argue over it, but we are telling you where we stand on this issue. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, at least where we stand on the Bible, that we use the Textus Receptus. So this is an interesting thing that leads us to the high intelligence of ancient man. Why don't you read to us from Ecclesiastes?
Ecclesiastes 1:9 through 11 says this: The thing that hath been, The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, See, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those things that shall come after.
That's a great verse. There's nothing new under the sun, but it's even more specific. We don't remember.
Yeah.
We don't remember what happened in the past. And frankly, nobody's going to remember our past either. Us, what we're doing. And that's an interesting thing to think about. It really is. Because historians have basically only gone to slightly before, they're in They know things about Egypt, but I don't think they know things about Egypt.
Yeah.
There's a wall. There's a time period that's blocked from our view. And obviously the pre-flood world would be that because it's gone. Mm-hmm. So...
And especially, I think these verses are very applicable in history because we see very often, we might hear stories or whatever, but archaeologists are like, that's false, that's just a fable or whatever, and then time goes by and then they find it.
Yes.
And they're like, oh wait, this was real. This actually happened. And it's like, they base a lot of stuff on what they can physically see and physically prove. And it definitely does prove the point that we forget a lot of stuff.
Yes. One of the first things that anthropologists, and I'm talking evolutionary anthropologists here, look for is farming. Farming is supposed to be a sign of advanced intelligence and all this. Well, we have this immediately with Cain. So Genesis 4:17. This is an interesting thing.
And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. And he builded the city and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch.
Okay. Interesting thing in an earlier passage, which we didn't read. He went to the land of Nod, a third country. And I believe he would found the land of Nod, and it would be known later as the land of Nod. But he founded a city right off the bat.
Yeah, it was pretty quick.
And called it Enoch. Cities are forming quickly under Adam's descendants. And we're not talking like little towns. Now, we have this really bad idea, even in Christendom, that these people were backwards. They were half ape, even though we don't believe in evolution. We still don't get it. Literally, they're coming out of the gate, forming cities and countries. That it happens quickly. And there is nothing new under the sun. You think that skyscraper somewhere is the first one that's ever been. It isn't. Nothing new under the sun. We're going to learn about a lot of this as we go along. I'm super excited about this, because I think if we understand how much more advanced they were than we even comprehend, we might have a greater respect for the Bible, for one, and kind of a little more wonder about history. It opens history up. History can feel very stagnant and dead.
It can.
But it doesn't have to be. Okay, so Enoch, the son, the city is founded after him. And next time, we are going to delve into in detail what the grandsons will do. It's amazing stuff.
They had a lot of very cool and interesting things that grew up real quickly. And I don't think people realize how fast these things just grew out. And the knowledge and the expertise that was required to do a lot of these things. So we'll get really into that and different things that we've studied up on. So we hope you'll join us next week for that.
Yes,
things
we're looking forward to it.
Start to get really interesting next week. I know it's been a little bit slow, perhaps, for some of you.
We were laying a foundation.
Yeah, but
and now it's fun.
Yeah, you have to get a foundation down. But we'll get into this, and it'll be very cool and very eye-opening, I think, what's coming up.
Yeah, it's not what most people think. I will tell you that. I think you will be surprised. So tune in.
So join us next week. We'll be talking about all that. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, please feel free to email us at thebibleinhistory@gmail.com, and we'd love to try to answer those questions for you. We'll see you next week.
If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe to our channel.
You can also follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and Google Podcasts.